Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Grand Cat, but today I am going to be Simon. And the last time I did a video like this, I was very, very sad. I was very upset, and my mum had just passed away. But this time, it is going to be a celebration of my mum's life. So this is what I have written for my mum's eulogy. It won't be read by me; it'll be read by the celebrant. But it was something that I wanted to share with everyone out there that is a celebration of her life, and I wanted you all to know what my mum was like. So, this has all been written in an email to the celebrant, and it hasn't been edited. So, there might be some bits that are clumsy, there might be some bits that jump around a bit, but this is what I wrote and what I want you guys to hear for all intents and purposes. Now, on occasion, I have to press the screen because this is the second time recording it. Because the first time it cut off after 5 minutes because the phone thought it was inactive. So, without any further ado, let us talk about the mother of the Grand Cat. I've been thinking a lot about my mum and what she would want said at her funeral. The things that she loved were her family, pets, holidays, movies, and games. The first pet was a dog called Poppy, which she named because she was so young she couldn't pronounce the word puppy correctly. After that, she had Lassie, which she even wrote her name down on the day that she passed away, looking forward to seeing her again. And when I was young and suffering with chickenpox, my mum and her mum, my granny, brought home a wild dog, Benji, who gave birth to a litter of puppies, of which we kept Lucy. The other dogs were all rehomed. Her children's names all began with the letter S, of which mine is Simon. I won't divulge my siblings' names, but by coincidence, all of her cats begin with the letter T. Similar to the new make of a car, the cats were like the new model of her children and treated just as such. The first cat brought home was a stray at a nursing home by her husband and was originally called Blackie, but when brought home, he was renamed Ted. Ted and Lucy could not live together, and Lucy was instead rehomed because Lucy was a silly dog and kept putting her face right up next to Ted's face, even though Ted would be hissing away and he would be scratching away and such, and it just wasn't fair for Lucy. So Lucy was given a rehome, and we kept Ted. Instead, Ted got a female cat companion, which was Trudy the First. After Trudy came Tasha the First, followed by Trixie the Only, then Trudy the Second, Tasha the Second, Tina, Toots, and Boots. And Boots was the first cat not named with a T, because he was a black cat who had white little boots on his fur pattern. And lastly, her final cat, who already had the name Poppy, who then gave birth to her kitten named Hamish. Her first and last pet were both Poppy, but entirely different species of pet. Poppy and Hamish still frolic in her home and garden. She loved her cats as part of her own family, and part of her last wishes was that her husband would look after the cats. She wanted to make sure that they would be looked after even after she was gone. I'm just going to press this here to make sure that it doesn't turn off. She loved going on holidays. One of her main concerns whenever she went on holiday was who will look after the cats. Whenever she went on holiday with her husband, I would come down and look after the cats and keep them company. And whenever she went on holiday with me or her friends, her husband would look after the cats. Me and my mum travelled the world together. Our birthdays were very close, only 9 days apart. Generally, we would go on holiday around February or March as a present to both of us. We went to Egypt, where we rode horses into the desert. We got to go inside the Great Pyramids, and we got to see the Great Sphinx. We got to walk the streets of Cairo, where many of the locals had never seen someone with pale white skin or long red hair such as mine, and tended to be quite scared. One Egyptian that I walked by on a bridge dropped to his knees and repeatedly did the sign of the cross, which is very unusual because the sign of the cross isn't generally in Egyptian religions. In one of the British museums in Cairo, there was a room that you could only access by paying an additional fee. We didn't know what was in that room, but we weren't going to miss out on it. and to our surprise, shock, and horror, they had the mummified remains of some of the greatest pharaohs in Egypt on display in glass cases. And we were worried that we'd be cursed for gazing upon them, but thankfully the pharaohs must have acknowledged our reverence and gave us their blessing. I remember to this day seeing the great pharaoh Ramesses II had long strands of red hair, which someone from Egypt really shouldn't have had. I wondered how many Egyptians knew about this, and my mum thought that maybe these Egyptians, whom a lot of which hadn't seen a television, may have thought that I was a reincarnation of Ramses II. We also travelled to Tunisia, where we rode upon a pirate-themed sailboat, which she walked the plank and jumped into the Mediterranean Sea. I remember being quite worried as the crew asked only the strongest of swimmers to jump in, but she did it without a second thought. The crew also warned of jellyfish and man-o'-wars that can paralyse people while swimming, and I was quite young at the time and didn't jump in, and her husband was in the hotel room dealing with food poisoning from the day before. We also went to Budapest and we went to the Széchenyi baths, which had various pools of different mineral and salted baths. They had saunas, ice baths, and even an Olympic pool, which Olympians actually trained in for the Olympics. At the time we went, Avengers Endgame was coming out, and I thought I'd just have to wait until I got back home to see it. Just going to press this once again. Trying not to have it spoiled, but my mum actually found a cinema in Budapest that not only had Endgame on in English, but because of the time difference, we would get to see it 8 hours earlier than anyone in the UK. It was purely by coincidence, but I posted online that me and my mum had deliberately flown to Budapest to watch the movie early and threatened to spoil the ending to anyone that tried to upset us. We went to the movie and my mum absolutely loved it. Not only the movie, but the audience in Budapest were cheering and applauding the things that happened on the screen, and she felt like it was more than a movie but an experience that she got to share with the entire audience. We also travelled to Florida and went to all the Disney parks, the Universal Studios and SeaWorld. She felt really sorry for the creatures in SeaWorld. They were taken out of their home and put on show. We had just went after she got her pacemaker, and one of the first rides we went on was Transformers ride in Universal Studios, and as we got near the front of the queue, maybe it was Disney, I'm not sure. As we got near the front of the queue, I saw a sign saying not to ride if you're pregnant or a variety of other things, but one of the things mentioned is you couldn't ride if you had a pacemaker. Concerned, I asked one of the staff, and I said my mum had a pacemaker, and my mum said, "Oh, you little shit," which was hilarious because she hardly ever swore, and the staff took her out of the queue to a little room for pregnant women, toddlers and such, where they could watch the ride's video without the experience of the moving coaster. When I got off the ride and met her outside, she said that the pacemaker means she's fine now. Before she had the pacemaker, she was in danger, but now she's able to go on all these rides. She then went on every major ride that said no pacemakers through all the different parks. Also, every park we went to, she bought the Express Fast Pass tickets, which were incredibly expensive, that allowed you to skip the queues. Anytime I'd been to these parks before, we just waited in line, but she was determined and said, "Money is there to help you." We've travelled halfway across the world, and these tickets will let us see all the rides, which we might only see half of if we don't get them. We're not missing out on the experience of a lifetime and the fun just to save some money. I've always remembered that, and I've never been afraid to spend money on something that can bring happiness or an experience since. Her lifestyle is very similar to mine. It's a Buddhist style, which is everything in moderation, including moderation. And it means that on occasion you should cast aside moderation once in a while and spend money on yourself, but not all the time, because there is a place and a time for it. She rarely spent money on herself and would save money where she could, often buying cheaper options of things, but she understood that when it was time to spend money, to not hold back or be fearful of it. Just tap this once again. She loved books and she loved reading. One of her favourite things to do while I was in primary school was to read me bedtime stories. We would go to the library and we'd pick out Goosebumps books, and she would read that as I was going to bed. And our cat Ted loved stories being read to him as well. My mum would sit in a chair next to my bed and read the stories. Ted would jump up in the bed and curl up, happily listening to the sound of my mum. I'd fall asleep during the story and she would continue reading. She loved the stories as much as I did. I remember one time at a Blockbusters, they were selling this baby T-Rex figure from Jurassic Park, which hadn't been out long, and she bought it for me, and I would fall asleep cuddling this T-Rex, and she would say nighty-night to me and the T-Rex. She loved games too, board games and computer games. She told me once when she was young that she would sneak off from school and go play Pac-Man and Space Invaders at a local arcade. She bought me my first ever computer games console, which was a Mega Drive, for my Christmas. And every birthday or Christmas, she would get me games for the latest consoles. Or she would get me the latest console as well. She started me in my love of Sonic and my love of Pokemon. And through the various presents in my childhood. Even recently, she bought me a Nintendo Switch for my birthday earlier this year. She always loved seeing the latest in technology. She was the one behind getting the Wii Fit and the Xbox Kinect for her work, so that she could host exercise classes for those that wanted them. One game that she particularly loved was Puzzle Fighter, Super Puzzle Fighter 2, and she was better at it than I was, able to defeat the secret boss Akuma. I remember asking her for help, and she could do it. She could beat opponents that I couldn't when I was young. Just tap this once again. Every Christmas, she would buy a board game. The last one that she got us was marbles, and she loved playing marbles, rolling the little circular rocks against the wall and seeing who could get closest to the wall. She loved games like Kerplunk and Scrabble, we were both particularly good at battleships. It's almost as if she was training me from an early age to read an opponent's moves. She was amazing at backgammon and had some legendary stories about being a backgammon champion. And she was so proud that I not only became a European champion, but a world champion in the card games. And she was very proud that she had raised a world champion. I've been to Japan 4 times, and each time it was paid for by the card game company Bushiroad for winning a national championship or topping a European championship or whatever in France and England or wherever. She always wanted to come with me to Japan, but I felt I wouldn't have been able to give it my all in the World Championship if I had distractions, of which she understood. But she wanted to go with me to Japan sometime outside of card games. On the day that she passed, she asked me to tell her about heaven, and I explained that I was brought up Catholic, but now I'm closer to being a Buddhist. I reminded her of what she told me when her mum passed away, which was my granny, and my mum was distraught. My granny showed her the other side, and my mum saw that there was an afterlife and that it was beautiful. And I said that my granny came to my mum in a dream and she stopped me. Although she couldn't speak, she shook her head and she said no, and then she wrote down it was while she was awake. Lost where I was there. And she smiled at me. She said that she meditated and showed me how to do it. She brought her thumb to touch her index and her middle finger, which must have taken a lot of energy to do that, but she wanted me to see how it was done, and she struggled to show me that. Then she wrote that if I meditate, she would come and visit me. I told her that this that we're currently living in is not the real world. This is just a game. These bodies of physical flesh are just shells. The soul is the true you. And I reminded her that the stories that she told me of people with near-death experiences, the first thing they all said was, but it all felt so real. And that's what I said, that's what I told her. I said, the first thing you'll say is, but it all felt so real. And I told her that once you're free from this pain and physical life, you'll be able to go anywhere you want with a mere thought. You'll be able to go see everyone and go anywhere with them. And when I go to Japan with my friends in January, and she got very excited, pointing to herself, and I said yes, and I held her hand with both of mine. I said, you'll be able to come with me, and I 100% believe that she will, because that's what I was taught by the greatest mother in the world. And there we go, folks. That is it for this little video. I hope that it can help someone out there if you're ever going through something like a parent passing away, or if you've suffered through something like that, then maybe some of the things that I've said here, some of the thoughts that I'm going through as I'm going through this, can maybe help you in the future as well. But everything that I've said here is 100% what I believe, and I think it's a fairly good way to think. And that is going to be it for this video, folks. I really hope you all enjoyed. If you did enjoy it, please give me a like, share and subscribe, and if you are subscribed, make sure you click that notification icon so you can see when more of these little videos go out. And I shall see you all in the next video. Goodbye, everybody.